Bienvenidos, señores y señores, to another episode of the Bleed Lows podcast. This episode of the Bleed Lows podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting, and your favorite casino and card games are available to play right from your phone. So head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use the promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. And joining us on the Carne Asada, it's a real pleasure. We are speaking with Jesse Sanchez, who is the Director of Talent Development and Diversity Outreach Content for MLB.com. Jesse, ¿cómo estás, amigo? Bienvenido.
Todo bien. Carne asada. I didn't know that was the name of this, the podcast. I needed to get you, send me some before we started. We could eat while we talk.
Well, here's the thing, Jesse. We're the Bleed Lows podcast, right? So our focus is we're a Dodger-centric podcast, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we talk about Los Angeles, we talk about tacos, right? But when we have guests on, we like to treat it like a carne asada. I mean, you know how it is when you're hanging out in a carne asada, you're eating, you're drinking, and then you're saying stuff. You're probably saying stuff you shouldn't be saying. You're getting into arguments that are ridiculous, and it's really... so it's real laid back. So it's not going to be gotcha journalism here, Jesse.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, real quick, carne asada story before we get going, and given the Dodgers, the theme and everything, like one of the very first dates, I count it as a date, but I'm not sure my wife counts it as a date. Then my girlfriend was to the Nomar Garciaparra carne asada. He used to have those events at Dodger Stadium a long time ago when he was a player. So I was covering, I happened to be in L.A., based in Phoenix, but I happened to be in L.A. doing some other stuff. And she drove up from Phoenix. And, I took her to that event. We eventually went on a real date that night, but I always tell her our first date was with Nomar and Mia Hamm, and their kids showed up. And I thought it was like the coolest thing. And my wife's like, I don't think she counts that as a first date.
Isn't that messed up, though, Jesse? I mean, do you always have to? I mean, well, obviously, you guys, it's too late. But looking back, do you have to declare yourself? Do you have to say that this counts as a date, right? Like, we're on a date. Do you need that clarification?
I don't know. I think it's unspoken. It was unspoken for me, but I don't think years later, I found out it didn't count. Years later, I found out it was a work event that she had to attend just so we can go out later that night. Whatever.
So is that why Dodger Stadium is so special to you? Is because it reminds you of that moment?
You know what? Really, I do. Every time I drive by, I mean, I'm in that left field concourse area. That's where Nomar had his event. And obviously, I've been to tons of regular season games there and lots of great playoff games, World Series, you name it. It's been the All-Star game. I went to the All-Star game there. It's a special event. I mean, it's not just special for LA and for Dodger fans. It's special for baseball, man. It's history. You think about the players, you think of the international element of the Dodgers, you think about coming from New York, you think about all of that, man. So it's a special place, not just for, I know people who live in LA and Dodger fans, understandably cherish it, but universally, man, it's a spot. It is a special place. So it's like it needs to be on people's bucket list. Like, go to Dodger Stadium and check it out.
Just real quick before we leave the story of you wooing your wife in the
It was great carne asada, man. Come on.
Well, it's just because this was back when Nomar was still playing, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you were over there in the left field pavilion, then that means that was during the time of the left field pavilion locos, the left field locos. I mean, how many of those people showed up at the carne asada? And Jesse, you don't have to be politically correct here. We're from Los Angeles. We all know the Cholos sit in the left field pavilion. So how many of them showed up to the carne asada?
I'm not even sure, man. I was so focused on trying to talk to Nomar and this girl that I really like, try to keep her comfortable. It's LA, so it's hot in the summertime, so I wasn't really paying much attention to other than Nomar, Mia Hamm, my then girlfriend at the time, Yvonne, who I'm married. So yeah, frankly, I really didn't see who else was there. You know.
I mean, you were covering baseball at that time for at least 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So had you at that point pretty much been to every stadium?
I have, and that's one of the beauties of the gig working at MLB and covering baseball for, over 20 years, gone to every stadium. And the beauty, kind of expanding on that, is going to all these different countries, whether it's Cuba, Mexico, Venezuela, uh, Nicaragua. I mean, you just name it, Panama. Puerto Rico's always have games. I know it's a U.S. Commonwealth. I've been there several times covering games. Any place in Latin America or the Caribbean, I've been there either covering the Serie del Caribe or events that were happening there, or international showcases, or whatever, man. So it's been really cool to check out all these stadiums, and it's not something I ever dreamed of. It's beyond my dreams, just a small town kid who'd never really got on an airplane until I was like 22 years old to be able to do all this. So I definitely know how lucky and fortunate I am.
Well, I mean, you got me beat because I have 18 stadiums down. I still have 12 more. But Dodger Stadium is the third oldest stadium in all of Major League Baseball. And I've been to Fenway. I will tell you, Fenway is beautiful. It's great, but it is not fat boy friendly. I love Wrigley Field, especially a day game in Wrigley Field is something that I think if you are just a fan of baseball, that you need to experience. But I feel like sometimes Dodger Stadium gets a bad rap. That stadium is not spoken about in the same way that Fenway Park is, that Wrigley Field, or that the old Yankee Stadium was. But as you as a visitor coming in, what was when you first went to Dodger Stadium, and this was before they did all those great renovations and they turned it into a hangout spot out in the center field plaza. What were your initial thoughts of Dodger Stadium?
Well, walking in there, man, it's like, this is where Fernando pitched. That's like the first thing you think about. Like, Fernando pitched here. This was his castle. That's how, growing up in Texas, when I thought of LA, yes, I grew up, with baseball cards and all that, knowing different players and that played in LA. But, what really touched me, or really helped me to follow the Dodgers, was Fernando, pitching there. So you go there and you say, hey, man, this is where he pitched. This is where he played. This is where everybody's in the stands cheering for him. That's history. That's part of our culture. It was just beautiful to, like, check that out, and then you see the things where, the colors of the bleachers, where there's the yellow, blue, green, all that, knowing the story of how each of those bleachers represent, sand, sun, ocean, all, the sky. Learning that was really cool. I mean, I wear people out every time we go to Dodger Stadium for the first time, and they don't know that. And I'm like, look at the color of the seats. This represents the sun. This is the sand. And little things like that. Walking around the concourse, man. You think about, for me, growing up, I didn't follow the Dodgers the way y'all did, who lived there. But, Kirk Gibson and the Homer and Oral Hershiser. Once upon a time, I covered the Texas Rangers, and Oral was a pitching coach there for a little bit. I still know Oral to this day from the Ranger days. But I think about, his streak and all that stuff. So for me, being a baseball buff, going into Dodger Stadium, yes, I thought about the team that was on the field and all that kind of stuff. But mostly it was about my childhood and looking up at this historic place and what, all the stuff that's happened there, man. So again, being able to go there now that I live in Phoenix, I'm there more often, playoff games, it's always cool. And as a side note, like, one of the best views in baseball is when you leave the press box. It's that very top deck at Dodger Stadium, and you go to that parking lot, and you can see the city, man. It's beautiful. Yeah. That is, like, gives me chills now just thinking about it, because you're leaving after working your butt off all day long. You're there all day long for 12 hours, and way before the clubhouse opens, and way after the players leave, doing your work. And then you walk out into that media parking lot that's on the very top. I can't remember what letter it is. And you walk out to the very top and you just see the city. You're like, oh, okay. Okay, it was all
it was all worth it. You know,
yeah.
this is what I'm trying to get these young kids who watch the show, who listen to the podcast, to understand, Fernando Mania. We know what it means for us here who grew up in Los Angeles, that, it's the reason why a lot of us are Dodger fans, right? Is because we saw Valenzuela. But for a kid who grew up in Texas, I mean, that to me is the reach that this guy had and how special it is.
Right. 100%. I mean, because remember at the time, early 80s, you can see some parallels now to then and now, but it was a different time for us in terms of representation, in terms of who were our heroes, and were our heroes on television, were our heroes on posters, were our heroes on magazines, and all that, the reach was huge. The reach was across the nation. The reach was across all of Latin America and the Caribe because of who he was and just how great he was. Think about what he meant culturally to, the Mexicans, Mexican Americans, to all Latinos. But on top of that, he was so good. I mean, the numbers are amazing, especially during that 81 season, especially in the years that followed. He definitely had some ups and downs with injuries. But you think of all the innings he pitched. You think of all the strikeouts. Just the mythology. It's one of those things. It's a movie, right? You can't make it up. You can't make it up. And it really happened at a time where, the city, the country, everybody needed something special. And so, again, it's really special to go there. One of my very first events was covering the Futures game, the MLB Futures games, where at the time was international versus the USA. And Fernando was the manager. I think it was in Houston in 2004, maybe. And he was the manager of the Futures international team. And just being there, one of my assignments was to interview him and talk to him. And that was a big deal. It was a huge deal. It was like meeting someone who was a baseball hero. And more than that, meeting someone who meant so much to our culture. He meant so much to the nation, and just inspirational. I know it's a baseball person, and people see him now. He's super modest. He doesn't talk loud. I know he does his television thing. He's very modest, and but he was a transformational figure for a lot of people. So you just asked me about Dodger Stadium. I haven't even thought about that question. It's not like you prepped me, but immediately went into Fernando. Immediately meant what that meant to me. Immediately means like the inspiration, like, hey, you can do something in baseball. You can do this, and in terms of, having the younger generation learn that, I talk to my kids about it, partly because we play this game, MLB The Show, right? And Fernando's in there, and he is awesome in there. And so we tell stories about, we play with him as the pitcher, and then I tell the stories and I say who he is, and kind of pass that on within my own family. And I go to Dodger Stadium, and I still see number 34 everywhere. I see those jerseys everywhere. Mm-hmm. I see him come out of the press box and get mobbed. He can't walk from the parking lot to the press box, or much less go to a concession stand or anything like that. He can't do that. And I see, people my age and older wear his jerseys. And I see some younger people, and that's when I kind of get excited. You see the teenagers or the younger guys wearing number 34. It's like, okay, somebody told him. Mm-hmm. Somebody told that girl or boy, who 34 is and what that means. And it's not just Latinos wearing it. It's everybody. Like, everybody's wearing 34, man. So that even makes me, it's a measure of pride just to know him, and...
Well, it's interesting that you say that, right? Because what you're talking about when representation, sometimes I think you need to see it in front of your eyes, right? You need to see the physical manifestation of it to show you that, hey, I can do that because I see him doing that. Which leads me to the story that you wrote, this fabulous story that you wrote that involves your son in terms of stuttering and how George Springer, I could go ahead and set this up, but I think you would do a better job of doing it. It is a piece that is available on MLB.com that I encourage everyone to read, because one of the tributes I give you as a writer is I really felt like you put me in that clubhouse. You put me in that dugout with Mateo when he met George Springer. And it felt something that was very private and personal that you shared. So can you explain to our audience, how did this whole idea come about of not only having your son meet George Springer and bringing awareness to stuttering, but writing an article about it?
Okay, so I'll try to keep it short because we can talk about this forever. Stuttering awareness is extremely important to us. It's personal. We understand how it impacted us and families like ours. So my son Mateo, he is 13 years old. He's had stuttering since he was 3. That's when we first noticed it. So he's been going to speech therapy, whether it's a school, private speech, therapist, to help him communicate. And one of the things, we didn't know anything, like a lot of families, we didn't know anything about, it's called disfluency and stuttering. We didn't know anything about that. So we were along the ride with him, along the educational ride with him. We're learning strategies. We're learning how many speech therapists there are that focus on stuttering. We're learning all of the breathing techniques, just anything you can think of. Because our thinking at that time was we wanted to fix our son, fix him, and that spoke to our naivete, that spoke to our ignorance about stuttering awareness. You don't fix something like that. It's very personal. What works for one person doesn't always work for another. After years of, him going to speech therapy and us going the ups and downs of through that, is we embraced it. What we don't want to do is stigmatize stuttering. So my son has curly hair. He has brown eyes. He stutters. He has brown skin. He has skinny fingers. He can throw pretty good. It's all part of his identity. It's not his sole identity. But so as we're going through that, he's going through speech therapy, and he had his own curiosity to look into other people or celebrities that have a stutter. So it was like, James Earl Jones. He's like, Darth Vader stutters. I think it's Emily Blunt. I think it's the guy from The Office, his
John
wife.
Krasinski.
Yes, his wife. He was like, oh, okay, great. And then he's like, George Springer stutters. He plays for the Astros. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. I don't know any of these other people, and I'm not going to pull any strings or anything like that to meet those people. But George is probably someone I can have my son watch batting practice and see, like someone who's doing an aspirational figure, as you mentioned earlier. So I didn't know George other than who he is as a player. I reached out to Alex Cora. He was a bench coach for the Astros, and this was 2017. That's not a great year for you Dodger fans, I know. But I reached out to Alex, who I've known for 20 years, when he was a player, when he played with the Dodgers. I've known him for a long, long time. And I said, hey, you think you can help us facilitate a batting practice pass? I want my son to see George. And again, we're searching for answers, right? we're going to different speech therapists. We're using different strategies. I'm thinking, maybe my son can see this guy and see that he's following his dreams and he's accomplishing his dreams, and stuttering didn't hold him back. So one of the major things was, it isn't just actually getting the words out, which is obviously important. It's building confidence and believing in yourself. And when you have a stutter, it can shut someone down. It can hurt your confidence. You don't want to express yourself. You start stuttering, people look at you weird. It's a very deep thing. There's still a lot of stereotypes about stuttering, and look at TV, look at movies. People still make stuttering jokes. Like, did I stutter? Stuff like that. You'll see like the guys in movies who stutter they're made to look like idiots. There's just a lot of things that are negative portrayals of people who stutter. So I'm trying to get Mateo to see George. Just my idea was just watch him hit BP, stand behind the rope. Not a big deal. We're just going to watch him. Maybe George would wave, maybe he wouldn't. So we go to batting practice at Chase Field. The Astros, of course, are hitting inside. He's not going to see George hit. The whole point, and then so Alex Cora sees us standing behind the rope. He comes, grabs Mateo by the hand, walks him through the dugout. We walk back past Carlos Correa. I know another Dodger favorite. Beltran, all these players, we'll walk by them. And, I've known these guys because one of my jobs over the years was covering Latinos, Latino issues, players, countries. So I've known Correa since he was like a 16-year-old kid and still in Puerto Rico Baseball Academy, and Beltran since he was like with the Royals. I mean, just long history with a lot of these players, And so I see him wave, and Alex Cora takes us down to the batting cage, and that's where Springer walks up, and he says hello to my son, and then my son had been practicing, and he said, George, how did you get past your stutter? And it was so heavy, man, to hear a little brave-year-old 7-year-old kid like he's searching for answers. How did you get past your stutter? And then George responds with a little bit of a stutter. He's like, I haven't got past it. And then like for 10 minutes or whatever, these two guys talk, and it was so intimate and so personal that they were sharing their stuttering experience. It was almost so personal that me as a father, I felt like I needed to step away, because it was like two dudes trying to figure it out and talking through their things. And it was life, and it really impacted my son's perspective. So after that, he started giving stuttering presentations to his classmates. He's 7 years old, so what's that, like second or third grade? He started giving stuttering awareness presentations. So every year he's given these stuttering awareness presentations. Last May, or maybe earlier in the spring, he gave one to the entire school's teachers. So all the teachers are watching this kid giving an stuttering awareness presentation while he stutters. So objectively speaking, that's pretty damn admirable. It's like, wow. And when it's your kid, it just like makes you want to cry, but when you see it, it's like, wow, this kid is doing something, so this spring we went down to, it was kind of a reunion with George. I talked to some folks about with MLB Network and maybe getting the guys together, and frankly, it was such a personal thing. I'm not sure I wanted to share that with everyone, because it's so personal. But my son is about raising awareness. He's about being an example. And in that way, I followed his example. I'm like, okay, son, we'll have a larger platform and you can share your story. And, I'll write a story, and you can reunite with George and talk about the things you've been doing and how you helped him. And George can talk about how you have helped him. And, the whole point was really to raise stuttering awareness. It was a beautiful video. I tried to write a story. Again, that might have been the most difficult story I've ever written, because it's extremely personal. Mm-hmm. And, there's some things you want to hold back and not share, and it's pretty difficult to share all that. But the reason was to show other families that this is what's happening. This is what's happened to us. This is what hopefully we can relate to in some way, somehow. And the reception has been amazing, from the video to the stories I hear about. Parents are writing me, grown adults have written who've had different, not just stuttering, but just different disabilities, kind of inspired by, Mateo sharing his and the courage it took to get on camera as a 13-year-old. And we know how hard it is to get on camera, just for example, I just said, right? I mean, there's little things that you do when you're trying to speak on camera that you try to avoid. So imagine being a kid, having a stutter, and then having the bravery and the courage to share that story. So it really resonated with a lot of people, and it's important to him. It's important to us. I tell everybody, like, we don't have all the answers. We're also still going through the journey, but if we can raise some awareness and we can make it easier for a family or for a child or for a grown up to deal with it, that, you're not alone. And if we can raise awareness for others to understand that, when you have a stutter, it doesn't mean you're not smart. It doesn't mean anything other than you can't get the words out. So again, representation, larger themes, representation, fairness, equality, all that. Those are things that are really important to me and our family. And it's good that I'm in this gig where it's basically what my job is, to make sure everybody gets a fair shot and a fair opportunity, and no one's prejudged. So that's a really long-winded version of the Mateo George Springer. If people want to check it out, you can just Google George Springer and Mateo, and you can see the video, you can see the story, and I encourage you to share it with families who are dealing with disabilities, and understand we're all a community. And I think when we all work together as a community, we can, help each other, man.
One of the other things I think that's really an offshoot of this piece that you wrote is the people that you mentioned. And in particular, the three people that you mentioned are not fan favorites here on this podcast. And the Astros were just here in town at Dodger Stadium. But I think it's important because what you did is you showed another side. I think, especially not just in baseball, but probably in society today, we often are too black and white, and we don't deal with the gray enough. And that is, yes, what these guys did was wrong, but it doesn't define who they are. Because here we are, as much as we want to say George Springer is a horrible person because he cheated in 2017, here's an example of how complicated people are. And I think it served as a really good reminder that sometimes, at least for me, and I'm only speaking for myself, I have a tendency to be a little too self-righteous. And self-righteousness is maybe a bigger sin than a lot of other sins, right? And so when I sit here and I read this story and I see that George Springer took the time to deal with your son, that Alex Cora helped you set this up, that, it's like they're not all bad. They made a mistake, and they shouldn't be defined by their mistake. I mean, just recently, it was Kenley Jansen came out and shared that they had an interview with Alex Cora, and that Alex Cora apologized to him and Justin Turner and Kike Hernandez for what happened in 2017. So I think it also serves another purpose, the story that you wrote, and it helps humanize those people. I recently spoke with Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts has a podcast where he's interviewing other major leaguers. And I said, why are you doing this? And he said, it's because people don't know the players. Baseball, he said, is the worst at getting to know personalities. That's the job that you're in right now, right, Jesse? Your job is to create content to humanize players.
Right. And it's a two-way street. I think, I think players in general have to want to do that. And then there has to be a vehicle, whether it's the beauty I see now is like there's a place for everyone in media, whether that's traditional media, whether that's bloggers, whether that's social media, whether that's podcasts, whether that's the new thing that's being probably in the works as we speak right now. So I think there's a vehicle for everyone. And I'm so happy Mookie has his podcast, and I'm glad he's able to express himself, and I'm glad he's able to, get players on there. When I hear things like that, that makes me happy. I mean, I want more people to express themselves. I'm for more people telling their stories. I'm for different lenses sharing their perspective, whether that's the players sharing it themselves, whether that's diversity in the press box, whether that's conversations. I think when we expand the lenses, it's all a good thing, and in terms of Mookie mentioning about telling personalities, I think everybody could get better at that. Right. And that's the goal. The goal is to share stories and humanize players, and let's admire them for how, gifted they are. What they do is unreal. It's not, sometimes we get fooled to think we play the same game they do. It's totally different. I mean, they're specialists. They are the 700 best in the world. We just happen to see them. and they play the same game we do, and maybe we get the same jersey they do. So we kind of equate what we do with them. But it's good, man. I mean, I'm glad he's expressing himself. And back to your other thing about humanizing the Astros, I think that's important. You know, we all have to humanize each other and understand we're three-dimensional. But I also, hey, if some fans will never forgive them and will want to root against them, I'm for that too. This is your choice. It's, I think we got to keep it civil and less venom and all that stuff where it's not unhealthy or unsafe, right? But hey, if you don't like a player, I understand. I grew up a Dallas Cowboys fan, and for it's not rational and it's not logical. I'm never gonna like the Giants, Redskins, Commanders, Eagles, all those people in that division because I grew up as a Cowboys fan, and then people were always gonna hate the Cowboys, for no reason. And even though we're the greatest team in the history of football ever, haven't won a Super Bowl in 50 years, but that's part of my fandom, and I respect people's fandom, man. If people want to cheer, if they want to boo, they want to, as long as we all keep it civil, let's, express yourself.
Jesse, I want to just get your opinion because it sounds like you can relate to both sides of this. You just talked about fandom and how illogical it is, but at the same time, you were covering teams for 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. When you hear what I like to refer to as a humanoid sit there and say to a major leaguer while they're watching on TV, this guy sucks, man. And it's just like, how often do you fight the urge to be like, I want to see you get up there and hit a 90 mile per hour slider. I want to see how good you are.
Maybe earlier in my career I did. Now I'm just more about appreciating different people's perspectives, because it's like there are the casual fans, there are the hardcore fans, there are the fans who will go once a year. There's all different levels of fandom, and it's not on me to like governor, what people express or say or think. But yeah, I'm kind of with you in some way. I don't always express that, like especially pitchers now when people come out of the bullpen and it seems like impossible to hit. I don't know how these guys do it every night.
Especially with that new camera view that you get of the umpire, and I'm just like, you have 3 seconds or what to decide whether you're going to swing at that, and it has movement on it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of fandom, man. That's why I hate the Giants. I don't know. I can't explain it. I could, all the 80s and 90s Giants players, New York Giants, I hated them, but I knew every player. I knew their offensive linemen. I knew their second string linebackers, and, the same with the Eagles. And it's more fun now. It's mostly in jest, especially with my buddies who are from Philly or from New York or, from all these cities that, I grew up rooting against. But I don't know. Is there a rhyme or reason? I go to Philadelphia for baseball. I have a great time. I have friends there. Same with New York, all these different, these cities in the division. But I don't know. I can't explain the fandom. And I think that's part of the beauty, man. It's supposed to be fun, right? Yeah. And for me, it's fun. And I hope baseball fans are enjoying it. And they're in your area, rooting against the Giants.
Yeah. We hate the Giants too. It's just the baseball Giants, Jesse. So it sounds like you're like a football guy. How did a football guy end up covering baseball?
I don't know if I'm a hardcore football guy. I was just a hardcore Cowboys fan.
Oh, okay.
But I grew up.
But that's how it is in Texas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is like we'll never understand it in California, right, Jesse?
Right. I think about it now. When we're in 6th grade and 7th grade going to middle school, we're having like 2-a-day football practices. It's nuts. It's probably illegal now. That was just part of your childhood, your adolescence was like practicing twice in August heat of Texas, and that's just part of it. And you go to your Friday night football games and it's a community event like that show Friday Night Lights. a lot, and especially the book. I mean, those are real. Those are based on real things, real communities, and people really rally around their football team. And you grow up, you're in high school, and you're a seventh grader, and you're basically running the basics, the same offense as your high school team. That's crazy, right? Looking back at it, we thought it was so normal. It's so normal. Oh, yeah, we're running the wishbone, and we're gonna have the single back, and look back, and you look back on it, it's like, wow, we're in seventh grade running the same formations as the varsity, because you're the feeder.
Look, let me tell you something, Jesse. I mean, that's how when we used to play two-hand touch out in the street, I'm running the plays that I saw on John Madden football, so much so that my cousins started calling me Bill Walsh, going because I'm in the huddle doing these elaborate plays other than not using okay, you're the bottle cap, you're the twig, this is what you're going to do. But it is crazy that at such a young age, we're acting like we're professionals.
Right. And that was a culture, right? The culture is football's king. Everybody plays football. Everybody cares about it. That said, I grew up in Arlington, around the Arlington, Texas area. So my favorite players were Pudge Rodriguez, Rafael Palmetto, Julio Franco, Jose Canseco came through. There was Ruben Sierra. Tons of Latinos helped shape my baseball fandom early on, because if you look at the Rangers were one of the first teams to really bring players from Puerto Rico, and it was a really international club, and there was a lot of Spanish speakers, a lot of Latinos. I'm in that age where I'm rooting for these players. That helped me. It helped shape my fandom too. My dad, played just like every other kid, T-ball and coach pitch, and my dad was always my coach. And all the way up to like 15 or 16. And so we grew up, we played baseball, and always had a passion for baseball, have baseball cards. And a matter of fact, I even took my kids to a local baseball card shop yesterday, recently, so they can see what that was like. Everything's so digital and everything's on an iPad.
Yeah, it doesn't feel the same anymore, huh, Jesse?
Yeah.
Like when we were growing up, you're making trades, and yeah, Jeff Berry, I'm still pissed off. I had a deal for a Will Clark, Cal Ripken straight up, and he backed out on me. He welched.
I know. One time I traded like so I love Ruben Sierra for the Rangers and Darryl Strawberry, right?
Yeah.
So I traded like 3 Darryl Strawberries. I can't think, maybe 85 or 86 cards. I can't remember, for like one of those Nintendo baseball games. The cartridge.
RBI baseball? Because
Yeah,
RBI baseball was legit. That was the best, where everybody was all fat. The graphics were so prehistoric, but like they wouldn't spell out the whole name. Like Jose Uribe was Jew Rib.
Yeah.
And it was, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, I was a baseball. I always loved baseball. It was a real passion of mine. Our family, baseball games, always going to old Arlington Stadium to watch the Rangers. It was a big deal, so we grew up a baseball family. Just football culture is just all around. So if you're not playing football, even like I'm a really small guy, but I'm still playing football. Everybody plays football, and then when you're not playing, you're lifting weights in the winter time. And that's just, looking back on it, I'm not sure if that's the healthiest thing, to indoctrinate all these little kids to turn into football machines. But it was fun. But, baseball was probably always number one. We still love it. I still talk to my kids about it a lot. My wife, my dad. I know my mom would be so proud if she's still alive to see like all the things we've been able to accomplish and do through baseball. So we're a baseball family all the way. My kids play baseball. My wife supports us. She's also a reporter. But we have 3 kids playing baseball. That's a lot of baseball. So you really got to like it to operate in this household. Baseball is number one. And like I said, this is my 23rd year at MLB, and I'm very aware how fortunate I am. I'm very aware of like a small town guy born in a house like the size of a closet, and then my dad, when he grew up, they was like picking vegetables and cotton and all things through his childhood. and I was the first college graduate in the family on one side of the family, and to do that, and I just haven't lost sight of that. So I think um, I know I'm very fortunate. So in my new gig, in terms of like outreach and talent development, I'm trying to make sure other people get opportunities and other people get a fair shake, and that we're treated fairly and right, and that there's representation. So all those passions have kind of culminated in this current gig. And again, man, I just feel lucky to be able to do it. I'm very fortunate. Baseball is a vehicle that I'm able to enact. Yeah, maybe it's a small part of change, but it's my purpose. So baseball has allowed me to help others, and definitely helped me grow. I met my wife at a journalism conference because I was covering baseball and she was covering politics. We met in California at a conference, Hispanic Journalist Conference. Um, so without baseball, I don't know if I'm going to that conference.
And without the Dodgers and the carne asada, Jesse, without the carne asada to close the deal, you had to close the deal there. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we've gone way over. I do want to mention a couple of things before we let you go. Major League Baseball is launching a content diversity fellowship, correct? Can you give us some information on that?
Yeah, so this was our first year of the MLB Content Diversity Fellowship. It's a program. It's a 9-month program. It's designed to prepare, recent graduates who come from diverse or underrepresented backgrounds for roles in our content department. For this year, our 2 fellows, they've covered spring training. They've covered regular season games. We sent one of our content diversity fellows to London. We had our other fellow cover the MLB Combine, and he's going to the All-Star game to cover. We worked. It was a content department worked in conjunction with the DE and I department at MLB. Billy Bean was instrumental in this and making the program possible. Matt Myers, Greg Clayman on the content side, Catalina Villegas on DEI. The whole goal is just to create opportunities for folks with diverse background and establish a pipeline. The goal is to help people work for us and get them to a point where they're trained and they can work for us. But if they also can go work in the industry, that's also a win. Right. When it comes back to what I mentioned earlier, diverse lenses, diverse voices telling stories of our diverse sport which is representative of a diverse nation. Right. So if we have lots of different people from different backgrounds, different perspectives, telling the stories that Mookie wants to tell, telling the stories that everybody wants to tell, that's a good thing. And if they come work for us at MLB and MLB.com, great. But if they're out there working for the LA Times or they're working for the St. Louis paper or whatever, that's also a good thing. And just having these conversations and talking about representation, talking about diversity, talking about perspectives, and trying to understand. I think it comes back to your theme of humanizing each other. Yeah. Like humanizing each other through conversations, humanizing each other through stories, and celebrating baseball. Like I said, I've been very fortunate to work in baseball, and baseball is a great vehicle, and it's given tons of joy to lots of people. But there's also ways that, baseball can also impact communities. And for me, I feel like this is my mission, to work in development and diversity outreach to help people get opportunities to share stories and humanize players. Because one thing I think you see it and it happens, and it's a common theme. Like as Latinos, we get all placed in one group, and people aren't always recognizing the diversity within our group. So one of the things I like to say, and when we talk about, is the diversity within each group. Whether it's someone from Venezuela or a first generation Mexican American. We can't just all lump each other into one group. And when we have these conversations about the differences and similarities, and then we talk about that with every member in the clubhouse, I think fans benefit. I think society benefits, and And we use baseball for as great as it is for fun and celebration, but we also use it as a vehicle to, to show that diversity is a good thing, and different perspectives are a good thing, and equal opportunity is a good thing. And those are the tenets that are important to me. The commissioners established several diversity pipeline programs, for folks in the front office, for scouting, now for content. I think the proof's in the pudding right there. Like it's important at the very top. So we're just trying to implement all that stuff.
I want to be respectful of your time, Jesse. So we're going to end the show the way we always end the show here. We do what we call our kickback questions. It's a series of rapid fire questions.
All right.
If you have a longer answer you want to go ahead and give it, then by all means, go ahead and do so. I'm going to start off, first of all, being that you were a fan of those Texas Rangers teams. Could Julio Franco still be playing now? And do we know, is he still playing now? And does his birth certificate still say he's 25?
Well, I can answer part of those questions. I don't know about his birth certificate, but I want to say he could play now. I think if he's in an adult senior league, he would dominate. I mean, he would.
For people who don't know who Julio Franco is, this is a guy, look him up, because with that batting stance, I don't know how he got around on pitches, but the dude was a masher, right, Jesse?
Yeah, amazing. And, he's one of the physical fitness guys ahead of his time. So if you Google him now, you're going to see like this really muscular, super fit person. I know he was in his 50s, maybe playing in Asia. I'm not sure. Could he still play? I think he can dominate some senior leagues. Back to what we were talking about earlier, the pitching's so nasty now. I'm not sure guys half his age can make contact. So senior league Julio, dominate. Yes.
We are big fans of the male soap opera on this show that we like to call professional wrestling. Have you ever been at one point in your life, going back to your childhood, a fan of wrestling, or do you poo-poo it? Are you highbrow and you're above it all, Jesse?
I'll never highbrow or above anything. So when I was growing up in Texas, my favorite wrestlers were the Von Erichs. They were brothers. They had this thing called the Claw. Yeah. And so I think they're going to make a movie about the Von Erichs.
Yeah, they are.
And so I was a huge, I didn't get into, WWE or WWF as much. I think that's when I really started playing sports and baseball and all that. But growing up, I forget, it was like Saturday Night Wrestling in downtown Fort Worth, and the Von Erichs, and there was Kabuki, and there was Kabbalah, and there was like, I think I wrote a story when I was covering high schools, like Junkyard Dog had a kid who was a really good baseball player. I was like, oh, Junkyard Dog's kids around here. So I do not poo-poo sports. My friend's sister is Ronda Rousey. So so we went to one of the events here at Raw here at Chase and Chase Field, and the athleticism of these wrestlers is unbelievable. I mean, the women, the men, the rest, I mean, they are outstanding athletes. Seeing them fly around, seeing how built they are, how strong they are. No, man, I'm never going to poo-poo pro wrestling, whether people say it's real or fake. I don't know. They were hitting the ground pretty hard. When I saw them, they were jumping off the top ropes and landing on people. It didn't look, maybe orchestrated is one way to talk about it, but fake, I don't know. It didn't seem like those muscles were fake. It didn't seem like that jump off the top rope was fake. So I guess that's a long way of saying my hardcore wrestling fan, no, but I am a Von Erich loyalist. So if that movie ever gets made about the Von Erich family, I'm going to buy it, rent it, go see it, do the Claw. They used to do this Claw.
So, Jesse, real quick, that Von Erichs thing, that's real, right? Because the stories I've heard, it has become such a myth, and there's so much tragedy in that story. But it sounds like they're following in Texas. That was legit. The Von Erichs were huge, weren't they?
100%. So the stories of these Von Erich brothers, they were wrestling brothers in Texas, and their dad's name was Fritz Von Erich, and I think he had 4 or 5 sons, and then they had also cousins who also wrestled, and they were monsters, man. They were huge, really skilled, ahead of their time. But whether it was mental health or whether it was substance abuse or whether, I'm not sure what happened, but there were a lot of, they all died. You know, whether it was, and I'm not sure the reasoning behind that. It was sad, you know, growing up. You see these guys, and you hear about David Von Erich, and then you hear about Kerry Von Erich.
Yeah,
you know, what's going on there. So that's why I'm also fascinated to want to see the show, the movie that comes out about it, because we grew up just watching them on Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then you hear all the stories, and they were so famous, man. It was a big deal. You know, they were the real deal, and I hope that movie does it justice. You know, I don't even know if it's still going to come out or whatever, but on occasion I'll see something on Variety.com or something that there's a Von Erich movie coming. But it was
I've seen those same pictures. The guy who was in Hollywood, High School Musical. I forget what his name is. I'm blanking on him. Is playing one of the Von Erichs. Last one, Jesse. Before we let you go, I had mentioned the Bleed Los podcast. We're about the Dodgers. We're about Los Angeles, but we're about taco culture here. Yes. You grew up in Texas. We want to know, what is your favorite taco? I know you're based out of Arizona now too. So you can prove a myth over here, because someone told me that you can't get good tacos in Arizona, which to me is shocking. How can you not get good tacos in Arizona? What is your favorite taco, and where do you go to get that taco?
Shoot. I mean, if it has a tortilla on it, I'm eating it. So it's hard to I don't know if I've ever turned down a taco, which is not great for health, or maybe it's great for the gym membership because it keeps you going. Al Pastor is incredible.
That's your go-to right there?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I'm walking by, it's like one of those shows, right? If you're turning the TV and Shawshank Redemption comes on, I'm going to watch it, right? If I'm not hungry at all and I don't feel like I need something, but I'm something sells Al Pastor, I got to get it. I don't know.
With pineapple?
No, I don't know about pineapple. I'm not. Okay. I've never had the pineapple. But I don't know. There's a lot of places around here. Arizona is a good town for tacos. It's like, don't believe the hype on that. I mean,
is there any place you recommend for us when we go see the Doyers take on the D-backs?
So there's a place called Chihuas Tacos. Mm-hmm. Chihuas. That's a really good place.
And they have Al Pastor there? Because I struggle to find good Al Pastor. So if you tell me a place that has good Al Pastor, by all means, I will go there.
I would check out Chihuas. I even think they were featured in one of those Netflix shows. Remember the
the Taco Chronicles. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might have been in there. There was a section in Arizona on there which had some good ones. You know, I was like, okay, somebody did their homework because they hit the good spots. So if you need to get a refresher on Arizona, go to that Taco Chronicles and look for the section where it says Phoenix or whatever, because they did their homework.
And there you have it. Jesse, we want to thank you. We appreciate everything that you shared with us. Where can they follow you on the socials, our listeners, our viewers?
So you can just, it's really easy, just Jesse Sanchez MLB on Twitter. That's my handle. It's the same thing on Instagram. I'm not even sure if people still using Facebook or not, but it's the same thing there. While my kids have tried to convince me to go on TikTok and these other things, I haven't said no, but I'm just not sure how appealing my content would be for them. So maybe you'll see me on there eventually. But yeah, social media obviously is extremely important to tell stories and to reach fans and to reach family. You know, I'm the satellite family here in Phoenix. Everybody else is in Texas or in Mexico. So I might post a little bit too much, only because I want people to keep track of our lives over here.
Well, there you have it. We want to thank Jesse. Make sure you guys not only follow him on social medias, follow the content that he provides in MLB.com. He's a great retweeter. I will tell you that, because I find a lot of stuff on Eli de la Cruz, all these hot young players coming up. So, Jesse, we want to thank you for giving us the time.
No, thank you so much, Juan. And I'm glad I can tell that Nomar Garciaparra Garden Asado story. So I'm going to revisit that with my wife. We're going to determine if that was or was not a date. So I'll let you know how that plays out.
Please do. I say it's a date. It's a date. We'll have our listeners chime in. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you so much.
This episode of the Bleed Lows podcast has been brought to you by Bet Online, where the game starts.